The Philippines, a paradise on earth, a country made up of over 7,000 islands, each one unique, each one breathtaking. The beaches, they shimmer like gold under the sun. The forests, so lush, so vibrant, teeming with life. The people, warm, friendly, always ready to welcome you with a smile. But amidst all this beauty lies something else, something hidden in the shadows. Stories passed down for generations, whispers of the supernatural, tales of ghosts, creatures lurking in the night, and the most feared of all, witches. I never believed in those things. I thought they were just folklore, myths meant to scare children. But that was before I stepped foot on the island of Siquijor, before I saw her, before I barely escaped with my life. I was always drawn to adventure, so when I heard about Siquijor, I knew I had to visit. The island was known for its crystal-clear waters, serene beaches, and mesmerizing fireflies that danced in the night sky. But there was another reputation that Siquijor carried. That island is cursed. An old man in Dumaguete had warned me before I took the ferry. Be careful who you trust. There are people there, people who are not human anymore. I laughed it off. Superstitions, I thought. Every place has its ghost stories, right? I arrived at the port in the late afternoon, where I had booked a small nipa hut near the edge of the forest. The owner, an old woman named Lola Sisa, welcomed me with a warm but strangely distant smile. "You travel alone?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. She nodded slowly but said nothing more. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I should have. My first night was peaceful. I spent the day exploring the island, taking pictures, and enjoying the sunset by the shore. Everything felt normal. But then, on the second night, I saw her. I was walking back to my hut when I noticed a woman standing by the trees. She was still, too still. Her long, tangled hair covered most of her face. Her dress was ragged and dirt-stained. But what sent chills down my spine was the way she was staring at me, head slightly tilted, unblinking. I tried to ignore her and kept walking. Then, she whispered. At first, it was just a murmur, soft and raspy. But then it grew louder. The words, low, guttural, sounded ancient, like a forgotten language. I quickened my pace. She took a step forward. My heart pounded in my chest. "Keep walking," I told myself. "Just keep walking." The whispers followed me all the way back to my hut. That night I barely slept. At around midnight, I woke up to the sound of scratching, slow, purposeful. It was coming from my door. I held my breath, my body frozen. Then, a voice, low, hollow, almost inhuman. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. The door started to open. A hand, thin, bony, with long black nails, gripped the wooden frame. And then the smell hit me. Rotten flesh, death. The woman stepped inside. Her face, oh God, her face, her skin was cracked and blackened like something had been burned alive. Her eyes, pure white, empty, locked onto mine. And then she smiled. Her teeth, they weren't teeth, they were needles. She crawled onto my bed, her nails dragging against the wood, creating an unbearable screeching sound. And then she started chanting. I felt my body grow heavier. My breath came in short gasps. It was as if something unseen was pressing down on my chest. I was suffocating. I was dying. And then I heard another voice.
Oi.
A man burst into my hut. He was old, maybe in his 60s, but his presence was strong. In his hands, he held a bottle filled with what looked like black oil and a rosary. Without hesitation, he threw the liquid at the witch. The moment it touched her skin, she screamed. A scream so loud, so unearthly, that I thought my eardrums would burst. Smoke rose from her body as the liquid burned her like acid. She thrashed, clawing at the air, her mouth stretching open wider than humanly possible. "Go back to where you came from," the old man shouted, holding up the rosary. The witch shrieked one last time before she vanished into thin air. The weight on my chest lifted. I gasped, finally able to move. The man, Mang Elias, helped me sit up. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp, watchful. "You're lucky I heard you scream," he said. "That woman you saw," he said in a grave voice, "she was once human." And then he told me the story of Maria Bacanawa, a healer, betrayed and burned alive by the villagers, cursing them with her dying breath. She came back as something else, something that no longer belonged to this world. "You think you survived that night?" Mang Elias asked. I frowned. "Of course I did. You saved me." Mang Elias shook his head. She let you go. A cold fear settled in my bones. If she truly wanted you, no prayer, no oil, no rosary would have stopped her. She let you leave, but that does not mean she is done with you. Why? I whispered. Mang Elias looked at me, his expression grim. Because she likes to play with her food. They say that when you leave a haunted place, the spirits stay behind. That once you cross the ocean, once you leave that cursed land, whatever followed you will fade away. But they were wrong. I left Siquijor, I thought. I had escaped, but the nightmare came with me. After that night, the night I saw her, the night Mang Elias saved me, I left. I got on the first boat out of Siquijor, my heart still pounding, my mind racing with everything he told me. She let you go. But that does not mean she is done with you. His words haunted me for days, weeks, months. But time passed, the fear faded. I told myself it was over, that she was nothing more than a bad dream, that she was trapped on that island. The whispers started again. I was back home, in the city. No dark forests, no old nipa huts, no strange women staring from the trees. Just concrete, cars, streetlights. I should have been safe. But one night, I woke up to something familiar. A soft, raspy voice, whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind or maybe my neighbors, but then I heard it again, clearer, closer. Are you awake? My stomach turned. My body froze. No. She couldn't be here. She couldn't have followed me. Could she? I tried to ignore it. I had to. But the next night, I made a mistake. I had forgotten Mang Elias's warning. I fell asleep with my mirror facing my bed. And at exactly 3 a.m., I woke up. Something felt wrong. The air, heavy, suffocating. I could barely move, barely breathe. Then, I saw it. In the mirror, she was there. Standing in the corner of my room, still, silent, smiling, her burnt skin, her hollow eyes, her needle-like teeth. And worst of all, she was looking at me through the mirror, but her reflection was missing. I wanted to run, to scream, but I couldn't. My body felt heavy, frozen. Then she moved, not in the mirror, in my room. She took one slow step forward, and then another. I couldn't look away, I couldn't blink. Then she whispered, "You left me behind, but I found you." My vision blurred, the room twisted, and then everything went black. I woke up the next morning on the floor. The mirror was gone. No, not gone, shattered. Pieces of glass scattered around me like a broken spell. I knew then I wasn't safe anymore. I grabbed my phone. I dialed the only number I knew could help me. Mang Elias. He picked up after the first ring. Before I could even speak, he said something that made my blood run cold. "She is with you, isn't she? She marked you. You left Siquijor, but the mark does not stay on the island. It stays on you." I wanted to scream, to demand why. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice shaking. Mang Elias hesitated. "You have one chance," he said, "but you must be willing to fight." "How?" Mang Elias exhaled. "You must return. You must go back to Siquijor." I felt my stomach drop. "Why?" His voice was grim. "Because that is where she died, and that is the only place where she can be stopped." I sat there in silence, staring at the shattered mirror. She had followed me. She was waiting. If I didn't go back, how long would it take before she finally took me? I took a deep breath. I knew what I had to do. I booked my ticket back to Siquijor, back to the island where it all began, back to where she was waiting for me. As I packed my bags, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, one sentence, one final whisper. "I knew you'd come back." I told myself I'd never return. I told myself I was safe, that Siquijor was behind me. But here I was, stepping off the boat, feeling the island's heavy air wrap around me like a curse. Mang Elias was waiting at the dock. He didn't smile, didn't say much, just looked at me with those tired, knowing eyes, and said, "You don't have much time." Mang Elias led me deep into the jungle. "The only way to stop her is to break the bond she has with you," he explained. "That bond was made the night she let you live. You must return to the place where she marked you." "My hut?" I asked, my throat dry. He shook his head. "No, her grave." My stomach twisted. "She has a grave?" Mang Elias nodded, his face unreadable. "Not one that was made by kindness. You know the story, how she was burned alive, cursed to walk this island forever. But what you don't know is what happened after. He stopped walking, staring into the distance, as if he could still see the past unfolding before him. The villagers buried what was left of her, not to honor her, but to trap her. They knew she would come back, so they performed an ancient ritual. They sealed her soul inside her own remains. But the seal was not perfect, and over the years, it weakened. Mang Elias turned to me, his voice lower now. That's why she still walks. That's why she still hunts. But she is strongest where she died. That's where we have to face her. We walked for what felt like hours. The deeper we went into the jungle, the colder the air became. Then, we found it. A small, forgotten graveyard, overgrown, silent, and in the center, a blackened mound of earth. Mang Elias whispered, "This is where she was buried." My whole body felt wrong, like the ground itself was breathing. Then, the wind stopped. The jungle fell silent, and from the darkness I heard it, a whisper. You came back. The air rippled around us, the trees shook, and then she rose. Her form slithered up from the grave, blackened fingers clawing at the air. Her face, the same burned, cracked face I had seen in my nightmares, grinned. "You should have stayed away." I stepped back, but Mang Elias grabbed my arm. "Do not run," he commanded. "We finish this here." He threw something onto the grave, a small, bloodied bundle wrapped in cloth. The moment it touched the dirt, the ground split open. A horrible, wretched scream erupted from beneath us. The witch thrashed, her form twisting, her body melting into smoke. Mang Elias began to chant. The air cracked like thunder. The earth pulled at her, dragging her down. She let out one final, piercing shriek. "This is not over." And then she was gone. The bond was broken. I don't know how long we stood there. Finally, Mang Elias spoke. "It is done." I wanted to believe him. We returned to the village before dawn. I left that same day. I never stepped foot on Siquijor again. And for a long time, I thought I was free. Years passed. I moved far away, far from the jungles, far from the whispers. But then, last night I woke up, and from the darkness I heard her voice. "Did you miss me?" Most of the patients here have stories. Some are tragic, some are violent, but one story has haunted me more than the rest. A man about 40 now, brought in 10 years ago, found wandering the streets, whispering to himself, covered in dirt and ash, no identification, no family, just one name he kept repeating. Mang Elias, Mang Elias. His records say he suffered a severe mental break, that he speaks of things no one can understand, that his mind has been damaged beyond repair. But late at night, when I pass his room, I hear him whisper, not to himself, but to something else, something I can't see. This is his story, the story of how he lost his mind, and how the Witch of Siquijor was never truly defeated. He came back to Siquijor. He had no choice. The whispers had followed him, crawling into his dreams, twisting his reality. No matter where he ran, he would wake up at 3 a.m., paralyzed, staring into the darkness, feeling her eyes on him, until one night, he saw her again, standing at the foot of his bed. "Did you miss me?" she whispered. That was the night he stopped running, and the night he called Mang Elias one last time. Mang Elias knew. The moment he heard the voice on the other end of the line, he knew. "Come back," he had said, "but understand, if you return, you may never leave again." He didn't care. He was already living in a nightmare. When he arrived, Mang Elias was waiting. This time, not at the dock, but deep in the jungle. "She is stronger now," the old man said, his face weary. "She has fed on your fear for too long. The only way to stop her is to end her curse." They stood before the grave, the same blackened mound of earth where she had first been buried. Only now it was cracked open, as if something had already crawled out. Then the wind died, the jungle fell silent, and she came, a shadow creeping through the trees, her burnt, twisted body moving in jerks, her hollow eyes glowing like pale fire. "You came back to me," she whispered. Mang Elias did not hesitate. He threw salt onto the ground, poured sacred oil over the grave. He began to chant. But this time, she laughed, a shrill, inhuman sound that cracked the sky. "I have grown beyond your words, old man." Then, the jungle exploded in darkness. He couldn't see, couldn't move. The black mist surrounded them, pulling at his skin, his mind. "She's inside me," he gasped. Mang Elias turned to him, and then he understood. The bond had never been fully broken. She wasn't just haunting him, she was a part of him now. Mang Elias grabbed his arm, his grip strong despite his age. You must not let her consume you. I will take her place. But you must never speak of her again. If you do, she will return. And before he could stop him, before he could even protest, Mang Elias stepped into the black mist. He offered himself. The jungle shook. The ground cracked open beneath the witch, and for the first time, she screamed, a wretched, horrifying sound. A sound of rage, of fear, of defeat. The last thing he saw was Mang Elias standing over her, whispering a final prayer. And then, they were gone. The mist, the whispers, the witch, and Mang Elias. He woke up, alone. The grave was sealed once more. The air was clear, the curse was broken, but his mind was not. The whispers never truly stopped. They lived inside him now. He could hear Mang Elias's voice, warning him, never speak of her. If you do, she will return. He tried to live a normal life, tried to pretend none of it happened, but the whispers kept gnawing at him, until one day he spoke her name. And the moment he did, a shadow passed by his window. A whisper slid into his ear. You broke your promise. That was the day his mind snapped, the day they found him, wandering the streets, whispering, trembling, his eyes full of horror, and that was the day they locked him away. I've cared for many patients, but him, he's different. Every night, when I pass his door, I hear him muttering, warning the air around him, don't say her name, don't answer the whispers, never look into the mirror at 3 a.m. Most of the other nurses ignore him. They say he's just a madman, but last night I made a mistake. I was doing my rounds. His room was dark. The small window on the door cracked, and I heard it, a voice, not his, not anyone else's, but a whisper, right beside my ear.